So Ferrari's long-awaited Le Mans prototype, or I guess Le Mans Hypercar now, as is the proper term, has been unveiled to the public officially. It was testing today with Nicholas Nielsen at the Fiorano Ferrari test track in Italy. There are some videos of this car testing, and frankly, it wasn't worth showing anyway, because if you've seen a sports car in the past, 5 to 10 years, generic V6 turbocharged sports car sound. That is what this car sounds like. Don't expect a V12. Don't even expect the sound of a Formula One engine from Ferrari. But this car is very unique and very interesting. So I wanted to take this video to kind of look at it because it's so anticipated. And of course, this was the project that Ferrari chose over IndyCar. So I will be interested to hear your thoughts and whether it was worth it. Now, I feel as though I need to explain first what a prototype sports car is in 2022 and will be in 2023 when this Ferrari debuts. Now, there are two different rule types you can build a car to race at Le Mans in. There is the LMH category, which this Ferrari is in, as well as some of the cars you've seen before, like the Toyota and the Glickenhaus, or the car that's debuting this weekend, the Peugeot. And yes, comment section, that's how I'm going to pronounce it. There's also a car called a Van Wall, which actually is a manufacturer that at one point won a world championship. Now, it's a name only, and this really is the old Bicolis, if you remember. If you remember Bicolis, that was the team that always ran about 1 to 4 laps at the 24 Hours of Le Mans and somehow found a way to crash. Now, those are the cars that are built to the LMH rules. And LMH, you're allowed to essentially do whatever car you want to. You're not really restricted in a lot of ways in how you build the car. Obviously, there are regulations, but you can build your own chassis, you can build your own engine. I'm pretty sure you can build your own hybrid power unit, all of those things. There's a second classification of prototypes that will be racing next year and have already begun to test. They are LMDHs. They're very similar to, or at least similar in concept to, the current DPIs in the United States. Now, LMDH will be known as GTP here in the United States. And the cars that have currently been announced for this category are Porsche, which will be the basis of that car will be the LMP2 Multimatic chassis. The Acura, which will continue with the LMP2 Oreca as a base. The Cadillac, which will be continuing with the LMP2 Dallara as a base. Entering the category next year will be BMW, which will actually be sharing the Dallara chassis that the Cadillac will be. So that's very interesting, the idea that two different manufacturers will essentially build two totally different cars from the same chassis. And then starting in 2024, we'll also see the addition of Lamborghini with a Ligier chassis and Alpine, which I don't think Alpine has officially announced what chassis they will run. They currently run an Oreca, old LMP1 chassis, but so it would stand to reason that they will stick with Oreca, but I don't believe that has been officially announced yet. So, like I said, the Ferrari was testing today at the Fiorano test track in Italy, and this is the only official image that Ferrari has shown off of this car. And if I could actually click on the actual photo, let's take a look at what Ferrari wanted us to see today. So obviously this is the test track, and you've probably already seen a much bigger photo of this car. So here it is in all its pixelated glory. Obviously a very unique design. There's quite a big wang on the back of it, and we'll get a better look at that in a couple of photos from now. Obviously, it's in a camouflage livery because every race car now has to have a camouflage livery, even when it's involved in a balance of performance class, like this Ferrari will be. So it's kind of funny that that they try so hard to hide their design, but you know, it is what it is. I suppose it's a little bit more intriguing, and certainly, you know, if they wanted to test this in secret, if they didn't want people to see it, well, first of all, they certainly wouldn't have posted it on their social media accounts, but they also wouldn't have tested it at the Ferrari test track. But this photo really doesn't tell us a whole lot. The next two will. Here is the first photo I saw of this car, and I actually got a little bit fooled by the camouflage, because I looked over at the I guess the left end plate, and I thought it was an extra part of the dorsal fin, and I was kind of like, what? what are we doing? Like, so if you look, I'm gonna try to really blow this up. So if you look, it looks almost like a fish in some ways from this angle. Honestly, the first impression I had of this car was like, I hate it. I thought it was really ugly. But the more I look at it, the more it's growing on me. Certainly this is not the most flattering angle. I will show you a much more flattering angle here in a second. This is Ferrari's own bespoke chassis. It is not based on any current Le Mans prototype, or hypercar for that matter. They are totally doing everything in-house. It certainly has a Ferrari look to it, much more reminiscent of the road cars on the front than, as far as I know, any of the other prototypes that are racing at Le Mans. And I do call them prototypes. A lot of people were like, oh, hypercar is going to be the comeback of GT1. It was never going to be that, and I've got a bridge to sell you if you thought that hypercar was going to be a GT class. It's interesting as well, look up at the top of the car, where you have these two fins on top of the monocoque, on the very roof of the car. You can just see the black outline. It's camouflaged on the right side, but on the left side, you can really see it. Let me see if I can really zoom in on this a little bit better. Yeah, see that black indentation that almost looks like a shadow? That's also on the Porsche. And I'm very curious what advantage that has. Perhaps it helps feed air into that massive air scoop on the tail end of the car. It also potentially helps flow air onto the rear wing of the car, which is massive. Massive rear wing. And you can even see on the end plate, which again, absolutely massive. The end plate is not flush, or it's not just completely a big plate. You can see the strakes, 4 strakes, essentially 4 connection points on the rear wing end plate. And again, I'm not an aerodynamicist, but that's very interesting visually to see all of those holes cut in it. Got to be directing air this way and that way all over the car. And here's really the reason why I think it looks so funky. The rear of this car, to me, is the most interesting, and certainly sets it apart from the other current LMPs and LMHs and LM alphabet soup, as you will. This is also a very high quality image, which helps quite a bit. So let's have a look at that rear end. And it is a glorious rear end, there's no doubt about it. Dual element rear wing. So you have the first part, which the dorsal fin is connected to, but you have another element, essentially a strake across the back of the car, which essentially is kind of like, if you remember the old Peugeot 905, essentially that's how they've managed to achieve that. Enormous diffuser. It's also interesting that it appears like the end plates of the car extend all the way down. There's essentially really nothing on the rear of the car. It's almost like an open wheeler at the back. Look how much of the rear right tire you can see. I think that's very fascinating. and I just wonder what this car is going to be like and how it's going to perform. It's kind of the opposite of the Peugeot as well, because the Peugeot has no rear wing, essentially, and the Ferrari has a lot of rear wing. Interesting as well that the side pod essentially is flat. You don't see that too much anymore. Oftentimes that gets very complex, but it really does, outside of kind of the narrowness of the cockpit, from this angle, looks a lot like a traditional GT car. It's just when you start moving back here, you go, hey, there's a lot of stuff going on. But it's interesting, isn't it? Hopefully we'll see this car. Now, that's kind of the other thing that I want to touch on, is technically this car is legal to race in IMSA. They would have to go to the wind tunnel. They would have to attend the Roar before the 24. But LMH cars can race in IMSA starting next year. I would love to see Ferrari come over here and compete. I suspect they'll probably just stick to the World Endurance Championship. But I don't know. Let me know what you think of this car down in the comment section below. It's always fun to look at new race cars. We don't get that too much anymore, so I like to take advantage of it when I get the opportunity. And hopefully, if some of you guys are smarter than me in the comments, maybe you can explain some of the more intricate details. It'll be a fun discussion. I'll see you there.